Welcome to the Equinety Podcast, where horse owners just like you share their incredible Equinety stories and how Equinety is changing their horses' lives. Whether you're searching for something to give your performance horse better focus, faster recovery, and more stamina, or in the extreme case where all hope seems lost, give your horse what it needs to help heal at a cellular level, you'll find it here. So jump in on today's episode to hear how Equinety is helping horses worldwide. Now, welcome your host, John Dowdy.
Hello and welcome to another Equinety Podcast. I am excited this week because we've got Kristen Wright out of Commerce, Georgia on this week's podcast, and she has gone through something that everybody hopes they never have to go through, and that's a trailering accident with severe injury to her horse. And without further ado, Kristen, welcome to the Equinety Podcast.
Thank you, guys. It's very nice talking to you guys and joining you on this beautiful day.
Yes. Well, and I tell you, the story that you have is something that everyone hopes they never have to go through. And unfortunately, you have gone through a pretty bad thing, but things are definitely looking positive. So let's go back to Reno is your horse's name. And so
yes.
Tell us about Reno, how long you've had him. I understand he's a 1,300-pound buckskin, so no small animal here. But tell us how you acquired him and everything about him.
I acquired Reno as a 3-year-old, and he had a pretty bad attitude. He was pretty pushy. He was kind of just a resale project that I had planned on putting some time on and getting his bucking issues under control and sending him down the road. But he kind of won my heart over, and we ended up being a team. So come September 4th, I've owned him 3 years now, and he has ended up kind of being my best friend and my best hauling partner and my only hauling partner for the past 3 years. So, he's a cool guy.
Now I understand also he's a barrel horse. So
he is a barrel horse. Tell
us how he has done since you've transformed him from this project into running patterns.
He has honestly... He's blown away every expectation. He's helped me reach every goal that I've set. We've competed with some of the best, and we've stayed at the top. We placed in our first rodeo. We got second at our second rodeo ever this year. We usually, run 1D, 2D about, everywhere we go. And, this whole situation is a little heartbreaking, because we're sidelined for a little while, but we're hoping for a comeback for sure.
Sure, and you had hoped just to win one race this year, but you actually won 2 with him.
Yes, my goal was to win a barrel race this year, and we've ended up winning 2 this year. One of those, we were actually the only person in the 1D, and that was an absolute thrill. It wasn't the biggest show, but, a lot of times that's not what matters sometimes.
Right, yeah, getting the experience with him out there. And
yeah.
Yeah. So then around, let's see, when was it? August 31st of this year, you are headed to an event, and
yes.
Tell us what happened there.
We were heading to Tennessee to a barrel race, me and my mother, and we were probably about an hour from our destination, and we, the unthinkable happened, and somebody in front of me, I was only traveling about 45 miles an hour, and they gave no warning that they were stopping. So it was either go into oncoming traffic or go off an embankment, hit the truck, or try and stop. And I tried to stop. And I didn't hit the truck. I did get stopped, but the way I had to stop ended up sending him through my tack room wall, which is a metal wall that separates the tack room from the horse area.
Yeah, so once everything kind of got settled down, what as you made your way back to go check on him, what did that look like, visualize? So, I mean, we're all listening here, but just trying to picture this as you...
It was kind of a blood scene. It was something scary, because I didn't realize where it was coming from or what really was going on up until I got in the trailer. And, I realized that his hoof had went through the welds on the metal wall. And so he, was hung by his hoof. So the sheet metal, which is what the wall is made of, was actually cutting off the right side of his right front foot. With every, movement he made or I made, it was cutting deeper and deeper. Luckily, I had my mother with me, and she had gotten on the inside of the tack room, and I stayed in the horse area because, I knew I could keep him calmer. And we kind of had to seesaw his foot back to the widest point where it originally went through, just to get his foot out. And at that point, there was a few people that had stopped, to help. And, that we are very thankful for them also. But we ended up, about the time we got him free, my, like I said, my mom was helping, and I went to pull Reno's foot out, but Reno took a step, and he ended up stepping on my mom's hand. So her hand was also broke in this, the whole situation. And once we got him free, I realized the extent. The blood was just pouring everywhere. I mean, it was spraying, pouring. It was a sight that I truly don't ever wish on anybody, or do I want to see again.
No way. So at this point, did you have somebody? Were you able to have somebody come out then, or did you just have to wrap things up and try to get back home to a vet, or what did you do at this point?
At that point, I laid on the ground for what felt like hours and hours, but it was about an hour waiting on an emergency vet. I laid on the ground holding his foot back together, and the blood was just pouring over my hands. And I was kind of just stunned at the whole situation. So I feel like my mind wasn't working just right. And I was more or less concerned with the bleeding, getting the bleeding stopped. And so we ended up having to wait for that vet. Well, when that vet got there, it was one of those situations, they threw a pressure bandage on and kind of sent us on our way. And so we ended up having to have another truck and trailer come and get him, just because, I couldn't put him through going, back in the same trailer.
Right. Wow. So what happened at that point? So he goes back to the vet clinic. They do x-rays. And what did they find? In addition to the visual damage, what happened internally in that hoof?
What happened internally is we sustained a P3 break, which is the coffin bone break. I think it's a articular wing break, so it's kind of the wing section of the coffin bone. That was honestly very shattering news, along with how deep everything, had kind of cut down. It cut about 25% down into the hoof itself, about down to the nail holes. And so at that point, the vet was, just kind of like, look, we're going to put a hoof cast on, the bottom part to try and, keep the coffin bone break still, and we'll play it by ear.
Yeah, so they didn't really have any positive things. I mean, there's really just a repair situation, or try to get everything to a baseline so they can even try to work with what they've got. Yeah,
it was literally just trying to find a baseline to see how it was, if it was gonna heal, or if it was, nobody really knew at that point.
Right, because also the coronary band is all damaged.
Yes, yeah, the coronary band took a very rough. It got cut off, along with some through the pastern, and everything was pretty much damaged.
Right. So now going to the first vet. So now, the coronary band's damaged. You've got a coffin bone that's broke. The hoof is about sheared off. And by the way, for those tuning in on our website at teamequinety.com, which is one of the places this podcast will be posted, and the podcast is also transcribed. We'll put some pictures in there, which are a bit on the graphic side, but you can see what Kristen was dealing with here initially. And so now you go to the first vet. Tell us about what was going on there, what the vet was recommending, and what they had to do for Reno.
The recommendations they had were kind of simple stuff, and I followed, what he had, advised to a T. And within a couple days, the foot just, it was turning kind of brown. It did have a little bit of a smell to it. And then Reno started having diarrhea. So I started, kind of blowing up the vet's phone and was like, something's not right. Something's wrong. What needs to be done? Can we get you back out? And they ended up sending us to UGA, which is, one of the biggest hospitals here in Georgia.
And so with that, so they ended up having to, or was there findings or recommendations or anything significantly different from the first vet, or what did they do differently over there?
UGA pretty much went in as, we need to check everything, every vital, every, ounce of blood work, kidney functions, figure out why he has diarrhea, why everything's going on, why did this turn necrotic? And then they went in and cut all of the necrotic tissue out. There was some cartilage that had died off also, so they had to go in and cut that out also. And they kind of, wanted to see how deep it was cut down into the hoof. They knew that the coffin bone break was there because they had got the x-rays forwarded, to them. So they were kind of already, they already knew about that. So pretty much it was addressing the wound and how to heal the wound or assess if the quality of life was, going to be good enough to, keep fighting to keep him alive, or, if it was too significant to keep him alive.
Yeah, because I imagine that was probably going through your mind as well. Is all of this worth putting him through, or is there a chance that we can come out of this? I mean, that was probably iffy for a little while as well.
It was very iffy, especially when the vets told us, look, we need to take this 12 hours at a time. That's really scary, especially when it's your best friend, on the line. And, I would never want to put him in pain that he doesn't need to be put in if it's not going to heal. So that's kind of where we were at. UGA, the very first visit, they weren't as positive, but I understand they didn't want to give false hope. Mm-hmm. So, we kind of left it at that, but, we went home and we prayed about it a lot, and we started Equinety, and that's when everything kind of started changing around.
Yeah. Now, prior to the Equinety, what other things did you have him on for this length of time?
Reno has been on Kimmy's Cocktail, which is an all-natural supplement. It's an overall bloomer. It just pretty much helps them on the road. It's got, every mineral, vitamin that they need. I've never had issues with ulcers, even though we compete every weekend. We've got amazing, coat, amazing mane and tail. Mm-hmm. This guy, he's just pretty. And so Cocktail, was always our go-to. But after, the extent of these injuries, we knew that wouldn't be enough.
Right. And with the injury now, you had him on Butte. Did you have him on anything else?
Yes, he was on Butte, and he was also on Equiox, which mm-hmm. is another pain medication. And he was honestly getting 2 scoops of Butte in the AM, 2 scoops in the PM, and this is all per vet. At the first UGA visit, they were like, let's wean him down and see how he reacts. And they were honestly worried about laminitis setting in. And causing, more injury to the opposing legs that weren't injured, but could have became injured if, we had put too much stress.
Sure. So this is, he had been on all that for a couple weeks at this time by the time you got over to UGA. So yes, when you realized that, okay, well, he's going to need a little bit more or something else to help, then you went on the internet's search, as a lot of folks do. And what were you initially searching for, and then what popped up?
I was honestly searching for healing of, bone, which I know, especially in horses, that's a lot different than humans. And so I was kind of on a search of people that have had, coffin bone breaks before, and, how they healed it, or breaks, period. I was just kind of on a hunt of, all right, let's get ahead of this and see what we can do. And, Equinety kept popping up, and that's when I kind of started watching their videos and, reading everybody's reviews. And, I seen some, off and on reviews, but there was way too much good not to try it.
Right. And so you brought the Equinety in, and you had reached out to us to ask 1 scoop versus 2 scoops. And of course, when we're talking with about an injured horse or one that maybe have come out of surgery, even for the performance horse that doesn't really have any issues, we always recommend 2 scoops because it just helps with the recovery, whether it be, performance recovery, or in this case, we're talking about an injury recovery. And so, so now you're 2 weeks in. You start the Equinety, I believe, at the 1st of September timeframe, September 6th or something like that.
Yes.
Today is at the time of this recording is October 14th, so we're talking 5 weeks. Yep. Okay, so what has now transpired over 5 weeks? Now, by the way, so the horse was casted up, and you couldn't see. Tell us about that. So they're going to put it in a cast, and tell us about cast changes.
He was in a full cast from the pastern down. It was like a big 10-pound cast. I mean, this thing was, pretty huge. And we couldn't doctor the wound. I couldn't see the wound. I think that was probably the scariest part, especially the first casting, is that, you know how bad that wound is, but you couldn't see it. You couldn't doctor it, and we're naturally fixers. So, that was a really rough 2 weeks, especially when they're like, get 12 hours at a time, take it 12 hours at a time.
Right.
It was pretty scary. Our second visit to UGA is when I was scared to death. I didn't want to see it. I wasn't sure what to expect. And when they finally got that cast cut off, it was like a breath of, fresh air. It was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And I kind of started thinking, I'm like, the only product that, we've added to his diet is the Equinety. And, by our third visit, we have not complete healing, but 2/3 of the injury is healed. The coronary band, 2/3 of the coronary band is healed, and we do have growth.
Wow. And how many months ahead of schedule are they saying that this injury has come along?
We are months. I want to say probably closer to 6 months. They were thinking it would take a long time just to get any amount of growth at all.
Wow, that is incredible. And for those tuning in for the first time, and maybe this is the first time you're hearing about the Equinety product, it's 100% pure amino acids. And essentially, in short, what we're doing is we're giving the body what it needs to release the necessary hormones, which help the body heal at a cellular level. So this includes the skeletal, ligaments, tendons, muscle, everything. And this is really what you're experiencing at this point. So now we're 45 days into this. When is the next checkup?
We go back on the 22nd, and he is actually completely out of the full cast. He's not even in a cast anymore, which we thought we would have to cast him for, months. But they felt confident enough in the way he's healed to put him in what's called a rim cast. So it goes around the bottom of the hoof to hold the coffin bone break. So the wound itself, I can actually see the wound now, and I can see the growth, and I can see the healing in the coronary band.
Mm. And as far as lameness goes, where is he at this point, the walking versus anything else?
This is the most exciting part. He's actually sound at a walk. That was, pretty much even the vets, stated in our last vet report that they were very impressed with, the fact that he sound at a walk. Of course, we really don't want him trotting around or, anything like that. But that doesn't say he doesn't try. So
Right. So I'm going to back up too, because with all the butane Equiox that you had him on, so he's not taking that anymore. Is he just using the Equinety?
Yes, he's just using the Equinety. He has not had bute or anything for pain in probably about 3.5 weeks. He's been off of all medications, everything.
Wow, just healing up real nice.
Yes.
Yeah, wow, that's exciting. Well, I tell you what, if this story doesn't move a person listening, I don't know what does, because that's absolutely horrific. And I know both you and Reno have been through a lot here, but everything is looking very, very positive. I would love to do a follow-up podcast with you in the coming months, so we can do another checkup on Reno. That would be great to hear. In the meantime, as I mentioned before in our podcast on our website, I'll put those pictures so people can take a look at those, which they are pretty brutal. But they are. Yeah, the before ones anyways. I mean, even the after ones, I mean, they're healing up very nice. So it's great to hear. So, well,
it's great to hear, and it's great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully nobody else has to go through what you've had to go through. It does happen, but with any type of injury, I hope that those tuning in will, take a look and try the Equinety product. And Kristen, is there anything else that you want to add to this story, or maybe let anybody else know that might be tuning in? I
am very skeptical on all supplements. I'm not a big supplement person. I've always stuck to the more all-natural route. And Equinety, I have all faith in Equinety. I literally am blown away with the Equinety product and what it has done for us. I mean, it saved my guy's life. And, he's going to be a miracle story, and, hopefully his comeback story is bigger than, this. So.
Yeah, that would be pretty darn exciting right there. You get him back and running again. Holy smokes!
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
awesome.
And he's young, and he's got his whole life ahead of him. And so, what's a year off? You know? And
that's right.
Some people forget that. What's a year? Yeah. I understand he's healing from an injury, but it's hopefully healing it. Helping his mind and everything too. And that's all we could pray for and hope for.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Awesome. Well, Kristen Wright from Commerce, Georgia, thank you so much for taking the time to share your Equinety story here on the Equinety Podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's all for this episode of the Equinety Podcast. For more information on purchasing Equinety, be sure to visit our website at teamequinety.com, where you'll also find product information as well as more testimonials on how others have seen amazing results by implementing Equinety into their horse's supplement regime. We'll have more stories on how Equinety is helping horses worldwide right here on a future episode of the Equinety Podcast.